We have the South Africa squad for the Rugby Championship 2024, the first squad that's been announced, so the first one we can pick the bones out of, which is what I intend to do on this video. Looking at the winners, looking at the losers, looking at what it means about how South Africa are going to play and what their approach is to this tournament overall. There are a lot of interesting talking points, so get stuck in with me, won't you? I'm Tim, this is Egg Chasers. Your thoughts in the comments down below, give the video a thumbs up and hit subscribe on the channel as well. So I'd say if we were coming up with headlines for this, the big loser, Evan Ruiz, out. Having been, and I was only talking on the video yesterday, having been so heavily involved in squads lately, and it looked like a lot of time and effort was being invested in him, he's gone. The big winner, Elric Lowe, in his place. And Ruan Nortje, who is in as a lock. Could it be the end of the road for Trevor Nyakane? That's another little subplot here, as I will go through the squad position by position. Also, there are a lot of unavailable players. You could almost make a team that would do very well on the international stage out of players that Rassie Erasmus cannot pick. And how much has that been in his thinking when you look at the size of the squad? I was saying yesterday on my video that South Africa squads for Rugby Championships in recent years have been big. 40, maybe even 42 people. But this squad is only 33. Now, it could just be that there's a lot of good players unavailable that will come back in, maybe for those New Zealand tests and the games against Argentina to finish off. And this 33-man squad is just the squad that's going to go to Australia. There's probably a good chance that that is the case. Equally, 33 men, that is the same size as a Rugby World Cup squad. So even though it's only 2024 and the World Cup's 3 years away, are we seeing a bit of tournament rugby practice from the box? Potentially that is the case as well. Lots to talk about. As I say, your thoughts in the comments down below. Firstly, those injured players, because there's loads of them. In the front row, Stephen Kitsoff, the spicy plum, not ready to come back yet. Second row, you've got three good locks there. Franco Moster, Jean Klein and Lud de Jager, all injured. Three scrum halves as well. Faf de Klerk, Herschel Janchis and Jaden Hendrickse. Quite interesting that those two scrum halves, apart from Faf de Klerk, are mentioned, because you sort of think with Morne van den Berg, they're not really on the radar, but they're still being mentioned. Whereas Cameron Hanekom, not mentioned. What do you read into that? Does that mean he is off the radar? Because my assumption would be, if Cameron Hanekom is fit, he would be threatening. Well, it would be Evan Ruiz, Elric Lowe, Ruan Venter, Cameron Hanekom would all be kind of vying for a back row spot. But Cameron Hanekom not mentioned. I don't know what we read into that. I guess we'll see in time. But also Keenan Moody, Edville van der Merwe and Damian Willemse. I also found it quite interesting that Keenan Moody was mentioned as a centre in the list of South African injuries as well. Another one to ponder. I will go through the squad position by position. Firstly, a couple of suspended players as well, with Jasper Wiese, 2 games left on his ban, and Andre Esterhuizen. Don't know what his ban is at the time of recording this, but probably going to miss the Australia test, so makes sense. Those two are on the outside. So that's 10 injured players, 2 suspended players, 12 players. How many of them would be in the South Africa squad when they're fit and available? Both of these two will be, won't they? But of those injured players, what do you reckon? If there was a South Africa squad being picked and these were all available, who would be in? Stephen Kitsoff, Franco Moster, maybe one of the other locks, Faf de Klerk, probably not the other 2 scrum halves, but I'd say the 3 outside backs there in Moody, Willemse, van der Merwe. So that's 7 guys. And the 2 suspended guys, 9 players that would come back into the box squad, probably. Would they be instead of other players? Or would they be in addition to the other players? That might be why there's only a 33-man squad. But there we go. That's one to think. What do you reckon in the comments down below? As for position by position, just as I did yesterday when I was making my predictions, I'll go through it. I thought Kitsoff might be back. He's not yet. Other than that, it's exactly as expected, with Jan Hendrik Wessels there, along with Steenekamp and Unche. Can play loose head prop, did at the weekend, but can also play hooker, so adds that versatility. And Thomas du Toit can play both sides of the scrum in the same way that Trevor Nyakane could. So is this the end of the road for Nyakane, and now it's the time for Thomas the Tank? It certainly seems that way. Nyakane has been an absolute legend, but Thomas du Toit, pretty handy. As for hooker, as expected, as predicted, Grobbelaar did enough to keep his spot alongside Markson and Banambi. Locks, I did wonder with no Moster whether, just like for the Portugal test and the Ireland test, maybe only 3 would actually be... the Portugal test, maybe only 3 would be named. But in fact, the surprise selection, bearing in mind he hasn't been involved previously, Ruan Nortje is in. 2 interesting thoughts on that. Firstly, he hasn't been involved and now he is. Some people might have preferred Ruben van Heerden. Nortje has been excellent for the Bulls. And that Bulls selection, I know there were some Bulls fans going, hold on, what about all our guys? Only a few weeks ago. But it does seem now that the URC final was the thinking, with the fact that players were not selected, because now we're seeing a lot of Bulls in. Jan-Hendrik Wessels, Grobbelaar, Steenekamp, Nortje, Elric Lowe, as I'll come to in the back row in just a second, but there you go. And as for loose forwards, this is what I thought would be there. Those 6 players as a kind of baseline, and then, I mean, I think I picked Ruan, Fenter, and I thought Evan Ruiz would continue, but no Ruiz, no Jasper Wiese at this point either, and the beneficiary there, Elric Lowe, and 6 back row forwards at this stage. No Fenter, no Ruiz, no one else. What do you make of that selection? That says to me, Quacker Smith is the number 8 until Jasper Wiese returns, doesn't it? Elric Lowe can play across the back row, but at this point, I'd say he's possibly a spot on the bench. It's going to be an interesting one to see. The team's kind of picking itself at this point. The first choice and the backups. What do you see? The number 8 position, weirdly, bearing in mind the heritage of South Africa and that number 8 jersey, I don't know. Where's this one going to go? This is just everything on pause until Jasper Wiese is back? Or Cam Hanekom, I come back to, was not mentioned among the injured players, but there seems like a Cameron Hanekom-shaped hole right here, doesn't there? Interesting. As for the scrum halves, I thought it would be all 4 because they've been investing time in Morne van den Berg. Well, we don't know what's going to happen when they're all available, because Faf de Klerk isn't, so the selection of the other 3, fairly simple. Fly half, all 3 of them, although Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu is listed as a utility back. Can play 12. We've seen him play 15 very well. Be interesting to see how the selection goes there. Centre, thought it would be those 4. Obviously, with the suspension of Andre Esterhuizen, I was thinking that it would just be left as that 3, as it has been. Although, as I mentioned, interesting that when he was mentioned as an injured player, Kanan Moody was listed as a centre. What do you make of that? Because Kanan Moody, as a 13, would be behind Creel and behind Am, wouldn't you think? He looks like he could be, well, I suppose with Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu, if Willems is back, then do you need the 23 shirt? My goodness me, they've got options. But Kanan Moody, could he find himself on the outside if he's thought of as a centre? I thought he was going to be involved as a back 3 player, but he has not been, and it is those 5 players only who have been kept in the back 3. Arenson, Mapimpi and Colby as your wingers. Fassi can play wing, but thought of as a fullback with Willy Leroux, who is getting very close to 100 caps. And it'll be interesting to see, as I mentioned on the video yesterday, what happens once Willy Leroux gets those 100 caps, and maybe once this year's Rugby Championship is done. Will that be the little full stop at the end of Willy Leroux's career? 100 caps, end of the year, and then it's maybe Willems that gets back, Feinberg and Gomazulu can play fullback, and they obviously rate Fassi, who's done well when he's been given a chance. That's an interesting one to watch, but I mean, so many good options. So many good options. Who's the big loser for you? What do you make about the Evan Ruiz selection? I can imagine Stormers fans not happy about that one. And he's got so many brilliant attributes, hasn't he? But it was just that one moment in the opening minutes of the Portugal game. White line fever, went for it himself, got ripped, and Portugal scored. And it's moments like that, for all the brilliant attributes the guy's got, there's just moments where it hasn't gone his way. I think he'll get another chance. But it's going to be so interesting to see what happens when those players that are unavailable currently come back. Could we see some guys that have been automatic picks like Faf de Klerk suddenly not able to get back in? That's going to be really interesting to watch as well. Your thoughts down below in the comments. Hit subscribe, give the video a thumbs up. I'll see you on the next one.